place of this hearing was originally published in the Advocate on June 3rd of 2021. It's also posted in the town clerk's office. State ethics laws require that I tell you this is being broadcast live. Everybody here is a member of the commission. Agent Kelly, Senior Clerk Joanne DeMello. When we were on Zoom, we had to tell you who is who. There are people that are on Zoom. None of them are members of this commission. Okay. Persons wishing to be heard will be called in the following order. So the first order of business is minutes for approval from May 25 of 2021. I know I've had a look at those. I didn't have any changes to make. Anybody else?
No.
Somebody make a motion to...
I'll move that we accept the minutes as submitted.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous, thank you. Meeting mail, looks like we have something from Eversource Vegetation Management. We have information on that.
Yes, we do. Sorry. Eversource is planning vegetation management. Tree work, what you can expect. We want you to know that this work will not interrupt electric service to residents or businesses. Work hours will typically be 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Due to weather or other unexpected circumstances, from time to time, crews may need to work longer hours or on a Sunday. And they're gonna work on the right-of-way 140, which goes from, let's see, goes from the river up across past the quarry and then up to the north of town. So, and I'll
Hold it up to the camera, maybe.
hold it up. I don't know if anybody can see it.
All right.
So, we have another piece of mail too from, on the same kind of thing. Bristol County Mosquito Control Project is proposing a ditch maintenance project on property in your town. Basically, the location of this work is along Clem's Way. We plan to excavate blockages from an existing drainage ditch on the property. Spoil will be spread evenly in the upland or removed from the site. Target commencement date is on or after 7/22/2021. Project is listed in our files as project AC 21-015. And if you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to contact them, and I have the number here.
And do they let the residents of that trailer park development know about this too?
I
At least the
don't
managers of it?
know. I would imagine that the people in Clem's Way, they have informed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Any other meeting now?
Nope, that's it for today.
Thank you. all right, old business. NOI, PJ Keating Company, 72 South Main Street. File number is SE001-0558. A notice of intent was filed by PJ Keating Company for property located at 72 South Main Street, map 15, lots 15 through 18. The applicant proposes to grade the eastern slopes of the existing silt piles located at the rear of the PJ Keating Quarry property. Applicant is represented by Douglas Vigneault of PJ Keating Company. Plan name is Site Plan of Land at 72 South Main Street in Acushnet. That's dated December 21 of 2020. This was continued from past meeting. Before we call on Mr. Vigneault, I do want to mention that we have a letter here from our part-time health agent, from Patrick Hannon. It says, merrily, the Soil Board and Board of Health require a full-size plan in order to properly comment on the plan by PJ Keating to remove silt from the buffer zone and wetlands. The respective boards request that this item be continued until the revised plan has been properly reviewed and comment received from both boards. Before I ask Mr. Vigneault for commentary, anybody else from PJ Keating? Mr. Hannon, did you want to add anything to this letter?
Not at this time. I guess I'll reserve my comment for what Mr. Vigneault's done.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Vigneault, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Just as a reminder, at the conclusion of the hearing, we specifically asked if anything further from PJ Keating was being requested. I specifically asked that question with regards to full-size plans that Mr. Hannon says that he doesn't have or can't acquire or whatever the case may be. And the answer was no, we do not need anything. That the commission can email the plans to the Board of Health, the Soil Board, whoever the case may be. And I would imagine they have every capability of printing those plans out in the town's plotter, or perhaps Minuteman Press, which is about 0.4 miles away in Bedford. We weren't asked to supply full-size plans, and we left it at that. We agreed to a continuance because the Assistant Health Agent, Mr. Hannon, stated that the Board of Health and Soil Board wished to provide comments to the Acushnet Conservation Commission. So therefore, we are here to hear what those comments are, and we'll respond accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vigneault. Mr. Hannon, would you like to respond, or somebody representing the town?
Well, first, Mr. Chairman, I would just clarify that I was led to believe that a full set of plans was given to the town. And after asking the agent for the full set of plans, she said that Mr. Vigneault had failed to send her a full set of plans, and that she had requested a full-size set of plans, and they hadn't been provided. The town requires full-size sets of plans for submittal. We don't go off of 8.5 by 11 plans. It's just not done that way. So we would ask that PJ Keating submit what's normally required by the town so that we can all make an educated comment. And maybe you want to check with your agent.
Mr. Vigneault, would you like to respond?
I was never requested to send full-size set of plan. The electronic copies were never under discussion, and that you all, the commission, have seen what we submitted, either electronically or otherwise. We're all capable of printing out full-size plans, and this is just a stall tactic until Mr. Hannon, who has told us he will be the next conservation agent in the town of Acushnet, gets into that position, and he wants to be the conservation agent prior to this hearing being closed.
That's an absolute lie. I've never said that, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
So,
you have. You said it on several.
Mr. Chairman,
occasions.
if we're gonna saw sawdust tonight, and then apparently what we're gonna do, I would object to this hearing going forward because it wasn't advertised properly in the newspaper.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask Mr. Hannon to state again that he has never told anyone at PJ Keating or elsewhere that he will be the next conservation agent in the town of Acushnet.
All right, so now we're getting into a tinkling contest here, which is not going to happen during this meeting. Adrian Kelly, would you like to add any context to this discussion?
I don't remember discussing the full-size plans with Mr. Vigneault. I don't remember having a discussion about it one way or the other. I think I assumed that the electronic plans would be fine.
So, electronic plans come in, can they be scaled up to be printed out in large form?
We don't have the capacity in town to do it, but it certainly, there are printers that can do it.
And Mr. Hannon, when did you come into Merrill Lee's office to ask for these plans?
After the meeting where I raised the issue that we hadn't seen the plan, I went over to Merrill Lee's office, and Merrill Lee gave me a plan that was a full-size plan. I brought it back over to the Board of Health office, and Selectman DeRoche was there, and Joe Correa was there, and we started to review the plan, but it turned out that the plan was stamped, received by the town in December. So it wasn't actually the plan that had been revised by Keating for your last meeting. So I brought that plan back over to Mary Lee and explained that that wasn't the revised plan. And that's when she told me that she only had it electronically and that she hadn't received the full-size plan from PJ Keating in this bill. And that's where we're at, Mr. Jim. Every other board requires a full-size plan. And this is your meeting. I'm not here to go back and forth with Mr. Vigneault and answer questions to Mr. Vigneault. I'm just simply here to comment on this project, and we have not had the opportunity to see a full-size set of plans, and this notice of intent has not had proper public notice. And I don't see how you can go forward with it. I think it needs to be advertised again and done properly. That's where I'm at tonight.
What part of this notice is not proper?
It was only advertised for 4 days in the newspaper instead of 5. And I think that the commission's well aware of having to change the schedule because of an advertising error in the past. And this has been discussed with town council. I can't tell you what town council told me, but town council is on the meeting here, and maybe you'd like to hear from them.
So I was just made aware of the advertising issue in the past week or two, and it's on our agenda tonight to discuss.
Right. So we know as a town that proper public notice wasn't given for this notice of intent.
But in this case,
it needs to be done properly.
But this is dated June 3rd, is it not? I was told that.
I'm talking about the notice for your first meeting, where the notice of intent, where the public hearing was open.
So you're going back to December, January with this?
You asking me, you asking Mr. Hannon?
Well, whoever is the answer, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I know that we had to
Seems a bit odd to PJ Keating that you would have waited until the middle of June to bring up the fact that it wasn't correctly advertised in January.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Please, Luke.
Thank you, Luke Legere, McGregor, and Legere on behalf of PJ Keating. I think we're all aware of the fact that we needed to renotice this hearing because the commission had lost a quorum over the course of a number of nights of hearings. That was something that I had discussed with town council. We agreed on a path forward to have the commission handle the renoticing. You may recall, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, that before we started the last hearing a couple of weeks ago, I specifically asked the question, I asked for confirmation that renoticing had happened, that we were good to go, and we were told that it had been properly noticed and that we were all set to proceed. So I guess I'm also a little confused if Mr. Hannon's talking about the initial notice, we re-noticed it more recently, or maybe he's talking about the more recent notice. I don't know. Perhaps I see Mr. Blake on the call here. Perhaps town council can speak to this. It sounds like he's familiar with it.
Yeah, I would like to call on Mr. Blake, please.
Mr. Chairman, how are you? I'm Jeff Blake from KP Law. In fact, I'm not that familiar with the issue. It was just brought to my attention a short time ago, in which I opined that there would have to be 7 days notice to the abutters and 5 days notice in a paper. I had thought that they made both of those deadlines, but I'm now being told today that the paper only ran 4 days in advance of the hearing. So I would suggest that to the extent that is going to be a defective notice, I would leave it up to the applicant to see how they want to proceed, because it could jeopardize their permit.
Mr. Chairman, we still do not know what dates you were referring to.
It was for the renotice, Mr. Chairman. It was for the renotice. When Mary Lee said that it had been published in the newspaper on June 3rd, it struck me that wasn't enough time. And I mentioned it the next morning, and Joanne brought it up with Mary Lee, and there was quite a discussion about it in town hall, and she's familiar with it. And there was a change made by a prior town manager that switched your meetings from Wednesdays to Tuesdays, but the town inadvertently didn't change the date that they ran the ads. So you're having a meeting a day early. And
When was Mr. Chairman, if I may ask,
Please.
Mr. Hannon, when, or actually your conservation agent, when was the notice published in the paper? What date? We know that the hearing was June 8th, so what date was it published in the paper?
June 3rd.
It was published on June 3rd.
Yes.
Yes, a Thursday.
And the hearing was June 8th.
Right. And Sunday, June 6th can't count as one of the days. And apparently Saturday, June 5th can't either.
Right.
correct.
So we've got 4 business days. So then I will ask Mr. Blake and Mr. Legere, in this case, because we've continued from the June 8th meeting, does the notification on June 3rd count for this meeting? Here on June 22nd? Does that apply, or does it not, because we continued from the last meeting to allow for review of your plans?
Well, I guess I think what you're asking me is, because we continued the meeting, does that count toward the 5 days? And while it's not something I have ever encountered, in my opinion, it likely would not. So it does look like there is a 4-day notice issue versus the 5.
Okay. And I know that merrily, this is on this topic of notification, but not solving the other issue we have at hand, which I'll get back to in about 30 seconds. Merrily looked into how much it would cost an applicant to advertise in the Standard Times, sometimes called South Coast Today, and to do it on a Wednesday to give the 5 business days notice, and it would cost like $250, which is a lot to ask of any applicant. The local papers are much cheaper than that, so that's not an option. So we're going to have to visit the issue here of changing our meeting days, which doesn't help us tonight, but it'll help us in the future. I don't know if anybody else from PJ Keating have any questions on this, because we have to deal with a notification that doesn't seem legal, and then also we have issue with plans that Board of Health and Soil Board think are satisfactory for their review.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if the hearing was not provided the appropriate time in the newspaper, that had nothing to do with PJ Keating, obviously. The town was responsible for doing that because of the issue with the forum, that we were kind enough to allow the continuance of the hearings until the town appropriately noticed the meeting at hand. As far as the full-size plans, I think it's a ridiculous argument. You know, Mr. Hannon's capable of many, many, many things that are made up, and I certainly believe he is capable of printing out plans down there. No one ever asked PJ Keating to supply full-size plans, regardless of whether or not Mr. Hannon refers to other boards or not. That was never a request. It was never brought up. The commission members found what we provided them to be sufficient, and that's what we go by. We're listening to the Conservation Commission, not the Assistant Health Agent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vigneault. So, Merrily, in terms of, let's go back to that conversation from 2 weeks ago, when you were you know, when you were asked for plans by Board of Health, was it plans, right? Do you remember anything about full-size plans at that meeting?
No, Pat asked, do you have full-size plans? And I said, no, all we have is the electronic version, which I sent him.
Okay.
And I did not ask anybody for full-size plans. I feel like we have a lot of plans already for this project.
Right.
And I didn't see a lot of difference between what we have and the new ones.
Mm.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, the next
Please.
question would be, what is the involvement of the Board of Health and Soil Enforcement Board with the Conservation Commission proceeding?
That is a good question.
Oh, that's my keys.
This has been going on for 6 months.
Mhm.
There's plenty of time to request whatever it may be that wanted to be requested. And I reiterate that Mr. Hannon has told several people that he'll be the next conservation agent in the town of Acushnet. He can deny that if he wishes, but he knows it's true.
My concern right now is what pushback legally we would get because this was not advertised with 5 days' notice. I would rather have a clear path without challenges like that. But since I've never dealt with this issue before, I'm not even sure how to proceed.
Mr. Chairman,
Who's that, please?
it's Attorney Blake
Please, go
from
ahead.
KP Law. I don't know if that was a question to me, but I'm certainly, I think that if the applicants would agree to a very short continuance, I would suggest that we count the days to figure out exactly how long it would take us to get this advertised in our 5 days, and then hold the hearing a day or two after that. I think that we could meet both parties, right? We could rectify any issues that may or may not appear because of the notification, and we could get this hearing done relatively quickly, rather than making the applicant wait another month or so.
No, we're not gonna do that. So today's the 22nd, if we advertise on the 24th, and this hearing happens at the next scheduled Conservation Commission meeting in 2 weeks, that gives us more than 5 days. Correct? Because we'll have a full week plus.
Yes.
And I'm, sorry that PJ Keating has to wait this 2 weeks, but I wanna clear up this notification issue. And I'm guessing that the next meeting is not gonna be on a Tuesday, because if we're gonna stick with, the usual path of advertising in one of the local papers, we're gonna have to do meetings on a Wednesday or a Thursday, and for me, Thursdays aren't gonna work, but we'll discuss that later in the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, when we were responsible for advertising, we advertised it in the Bedford Times.
Okay,
At the full price of that, if we're gonna chip off, $50 here or there, I don't really see the point. It should just be a regular requirement. You don't have to change your meeting date. It should be a regular requirement that use the standard times.
Or we could advertise a week earlier.
mm-hmm.
For the-
Yeah, the other option is to advertise a week earlier, like I'm proposing we do this week, which would be certainly easier for my schedule.
Chairman, if I may, another issue that perhaps the commission would like to look into is having a DEP file number prior to opening any hearing at all. It does not make sense for someone to come into the commission with a relatively simple project, had it automatically continue because the DEP file number hasn't been issued.
Right. That wasn't the case with PJ Keating, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Most certainly was.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Point well taken. No, well made. So I'm gonna propose, irrespective,
I have a question.
please, sorry.
Is Mr. Vineyard just talking about the ad? Are we just talking about doing an ad, or are we talking about sending out all the certifications again also? Is it just the ad that goes along, they both go together? Normally, when you send out an ad, you also do the whole notification to abutters. That has been done.
For a continuance too?
Well, no, but if he's talking about something, the ad wasn't legally
Mhm.
ad by the time, does all that in conjunction go together, or are we just looking to re-add it again? Just my
To
question.
re-advertise?
To re-advertise, is that
If
it?
I may, Mr. Chairman, first of all, I did not bring up,
No, it wasn't.
I know,
Pat.
yeah.
and secondly, yes, you'd have to notify all the abutters again, because if that's the
Yep.
out that you're gonna take.
No. So, in other words, it's the whole package. You have to do the ad along with the notification to the abutters. We might as well get a new DEP number too. Or
No, we don't need one,
no?
right, no, this DEP file number can stay, as far as I know. You wanna say something or not, no?
No, I'm curious what the answer to that is, though, if we have to re-notify all the abutters again
Even for a continuance?
for this meeting. I mean, if we have to re-advertise, do we need to re-notify the abutters too?
I think he said yes.
Yes.
Am I seeing a yes over there on the screen from somebody?
Yes, I heard yes, yeah.
This is Attorney Blake again. My understanding is that you properly noticed, or you properly notified the abutters. You held a hearing on June 8th, at which time you continued the hearing to a time and a date certain, tonight.
Mm-hmm.
So they were properly noticed, and they properly know that they were supposed to be here tonight if they had a reason to be here. If you were to continue the matter again to a time and a date certain, I think that you would I think that you could not have to re-notice the abutters. But tonight you would have to continue it to a time and date certain, which would be, and since you took no action whatsoever, which would be, I've forgotten the day already. But in my opinion, you could do that. Now again, I would ask, because it's the applicant's permit that would be at issue here for want of notice, if the applicant is okay with that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Blake. Mr. Vigneault or somebody else from PJ Keating want to respond?
Well, simply enough, that's a tough call for us to make. We're at liberty to either agree to a continuance or not.
Mm-hmm.
But we're also at liberty to state that if the advertisement was not done correctly, then that falls squarely on the Acushnet Conservation Commission, unfortunately. We are concerned what the future holds for the Conservation Commission. We see what's already occurred with Miss Kelly. I don't know the grounds for her contract not being, renewed. I don't know how much the commission had to say about that or not, or if that was completely out of your hands and in someone else's, who I can only presume who it would be. We do not agree to a continuance. We will appeal to DEP rather than potentially deal with who we may have to deal with.
Okay.
Therefore, Conservation Commission can be free of PJ Keating with regards to this issue. And we will note to DEP the issues that came about with regards to incorrect advertising and the potentiality that exists before us. It's untenable for us to continue to deal with this person, and it will continue to be so in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vigneault. All right, I guess we have a couple of loose ends to tie up here, so we know how PJ Keating's gonna respond, but we still need, we're gonna make a motion here, so I'm gonna entertain a motion to,
If I may, once again, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
please.
The whole plan here was to have Conoco, their wetlands expert, Mike Toohill,
Mm-hmm.
our wetlands expert, Chuck Aaron, work things out mutually agreeable to each other. Not to bring in other sundry, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
that will obviously occur. It occurs to us on a daily basis. We've been hit with frivolous cease and desist orders, frivolous enforcement orders that even you yourselves have voted down. And, this is just the ongoing that's going to occur. And I wish the Acushnet Conservation Commission all the best.
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, again, Luke Legere. So my view on this, and I welcome Attorney Blake's opinion if he disagrees, is that essentially what you've heard from Mr. Vigneault right now is that PJ Keating is willing to accept any risk associated with the possibility that there was a defect in the more recent notice, and would like to proceed and is not willing to agree to a further continuance. So in my view, that means the commission can now go ahead with the hearing. And then again, if there's an appeal based on improper notice, that's something PJ Keating's going to have to deal with. But in other words, you could proceed, with the hearing tonight here. I see your peer review consultant, Mr. Toohill, is here. Perhaps you're planning to hear from him, and then ultimately close and vote. I mean, that's what I see here. But again, if Mr. Blake sees it differently, he's your attorney.
Mr. Chairman, Jeffrey Blake, I do see it slightly differently. You certainly, with Keating, knows the risk because of notification. You can certainly move forward, and you can close the hearing. You don't have to vote tonight, though. You have 21 days to make a decision upon closing of the hearing. So you could listen to your expert. You could say that it wasn't properly noticed and renotice it, although we would then perhaps run into some issues with respect to having to hold a hearing within 21 days of the application. But in any event, you could listen to your experts. You could close the hearing, and then you have 21 days to make a decision, which means that you could hold another meeting in 2 weeks and deliberate, if you will, over the decision, and then at that point you could have a draft decision before you, and you could vote and sign that draft decision.
Mr. Toohill, I'd like to call on you. You've had a chance to review these plans. I know we had you speak a couple of weeks ago. Would you refresh our memories regarding your interpretation of what you saw?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Back on May 20th, I think it was, Chuck Karen and Marilee and I went back out to the site. We had Chuck's proposed restoration plan in hand at that point, so we went out to kind of ground truth the restoration plan, and we reviewed the 3 areas that he outlined in the restoration plan. Chuck and I think have a slight difference of opinion as to how to treat area 1, but what we agree is that really the whole area needs 2 things. One, not to do the restoration until the stockpiles are moved, because a lot of the restoration area is right at the toe of the stockpile. There has to be some work moved down there. There's always a potential of some additional harm due to moving, when moving the stockpiles. So it'd be better to move the stockpiles first, then complete the restoration second. That's the first thing. The second is that there are some areas out there where we could probably leave some of the material, but in order to fully evaluate that, I think Chuck, you can jump in, both think that we should wait until this fall, because we're already seeing some growth. We were out there in mid-May. We're already seeing some regrowth in those areas. The question is it substantial enough that it is essentially self-restoration of some of the areas? And so we won't know that until we get a good growing season under our belts. So we're talking about going back out there again, probably late September, early October, to see how those areas have progressed. So that's kind of where we are on the restoration plan review at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Tittle. Mr. Karen, would you like to comment, please?
No, what Mike said is right. I think the whole key to this is monitoring those areas to see what happens. Give them some time. There is evidence that they are coming back. There's vegetation poking through things and becoming established on it that are wetland species. So I think we need to look at it this fall, and I really think, we may even need to give it, and it is what I specified in the monitoring plan, is even to go into a second growing season to see what happens longer term there. If we see things headed in the right direction but not great yet, we go, we monitor a little bit longer to see, because the less disturbance we have to do in the wetland, the better. I think that was the discussion all along with Mike and with the commission was, if we can avoid having to go in there and causing a lot of disturbance, the wetlands are better on. So.
If I remember, there was also an area where it was recommended that silt that had washed in be removed and allowed,
Yeah.
and seeded.
Yeah, there's one area, it's outside of the tree line, so we'd not be getting really into any of the native vegetation. That's one of the areas where the wetlands has expanded dramatically between 2009 and now. The wetlands have expanded in there into what were uplands on top, where there's been this sediment deposit. The wetlands have expanded onto it. In multiple spots that's happened. I'm at a loss as to what conditions we've created that are creating wetlands. So we're talking about the area that's outside the tree line where there's no well-established native shrubs or any trees, just getting that dug back down to the wetland level, which may be lower than what it was before even, and restoring that back to wetlands. So, yeah, there's basically two steps to that area, and then the monitoring and potential restoration down the road of other areas that are back into the trees.
Right. There's area one that's to the north, that's back in the trees. That's the area that we want to keep our eyes on and see what's going on in there from a natural restoration process, as opposed to having to go in. There's some areas of fairly significant sediment in there, and if we get colonization, that's one thing, but we may not get some colonization back there, and that's what Chuck and I talked about, is we need to watch that area to see exactly what happens. We need to have, as you would in a wetland replication area, 75% coverage by wetland species, and so if we have larger bare areas that have significantly deep sediment, it means that stuff just won't grow in there because the sediment's too deep, but we don't know that yet.
And it sounds like, just to get back to your point, Mr. Toohill, about the area where you don't necessarily agree, is you're recommending removing of the stockpile. Mr. Karen, do you recommend removal, or are you saying that some of this work can start before the stockpile is removed?
I think it should all wait until after the stockpiles are moved, just because there is that risk as you're moving that much material around, with there being, some erosion event again. Everyone's going to work very hard to avoid that, but you could be in the middle of it and have 20 inches of rain from a hurricane, and we don't want to have to go in there and do things twice, but, and disturb the wetlands twice as a result.
I've asked our clerk for the minutes of the last meeting. I want to take a quick look at those. Do you have them handy? No?
Oh, wait a minute, last meeting, June 8th?
Yeah.
No, I do not
Okay.
have that.
Let me regain the question I was just gonna ask you. Mr. Vigno, I think I should ask this to you, and I believe that you had already said, PJ Keating is gonna do the removal of the soil, and would that start, or the removal of the stockpile, I should say, and how soon, if, you know, if this were approved by this commission, how soon after could that happen? Did that come up at that last meeting? I don't recall.
It did, Mr. Chairman, and, you know, we're contemplating that, Rob Robinson, who was my boss and in charge of the quarry, so to speak, I would defer to Rob, but this, was a long time coming, that silt pile, has been there for many, many, many decades. We ourselves personally inherited it, BJK caused it, but we would certainly need some time to rectify the situation. It's not gonna happen overnight. We've had that discussion, I know, and that the commission members realize that as well. With regards to the onset of the removal process, I frankly don't know. We're trying to get through this process, find out what the order says, and then we'll make a determination as to when it will begin. The commission should also know that the Board of Health and the Board of Selectmen have essentially shut down BJ Keating in Acushnet. We have very few people present there now, basically a skeleton crew to do some maintenance on things that hopefully someday will return to operations down there. But the town of Acushnet has essentially shut the doors on PJ Keating. And anyone listening out there who's lost their job as a result of it should know full well who caused that issue. And it was not the Conservation Commission. Thank you.
I'll beg your indulgence for a moment here as I ponder all of this. I should ask my commission members if they have any questions or comments on what we've been hearing.
My only question is like what the ramifications are for the town if they already waived the improper notice. What is gonna fall on the town if we do go proceed with this? You know what I mean? I heard other options of what we could do, but I didn't hear the actual. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. No, I think, yeah, Mr. Blake.
Mr. Chairman, the ramifications would be that any permit that you guys issue may be subject to challenge for want of proper notice, which would require, I believe, ultimately to come back here. At a minimum, they may request a superseding order of conditions before the DEP, and DEP would then substitute its judgment for that of this local conservation commission.
That's about what I thought.
I'm with Ryan too. I'm concerned about that, so.
Mhm.
That's really my only concern.
Yeah.
Mhm. Remember, Mr. Karen, you gave us a plan for the grading, for the seating, for the substrate. I'm guessing nothing's changed in 2 weeks for your plans for that.
And those plans were submitted by James Tetro, and nothing has changed since
Okay.
that time.
Sorry. Mr. Tetro, did you want to give any comments on that? Oh, you just put yourself on mute.
Sorry about that.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vino is correct. The plans dated 4/23/2021 are still active. Has been no change.
All right. And again, I apologize for asking all the questions, but I don't have a choice here. So that plan was to stabilize the pile until it is moved, correct?
That plan is for the regrading of the area in proximity to the wetlands to move the pile outside of the buffer zone. It does not specify the ultimate destination of the surplus material created.
Other than the fact that it will be outside jurisdictional wetland area.
Right.
Correct. Mr. Vino is correct in his additional remarks that the material will be moved outside of jurisdictional areas.
Thank you for that clarification. Marley, any other thoughts about the plan that was presented to us 2 weeks ago? We have the,
No,
as
I,
Mr. Tatro just commented, we've heard from Mr. Toohill, Mr. Karen, they seem to be in agreement on
Yeah.
behalf of the town, on behalf of PJ Keating.
I would defer to the specialist.
Yeah. All right, knowing that we may have a challenge before us, or a challenge to our vote here, I still have to move this hearing forward. And I'm not a lawyer, I don't play one on television, I'm doing my best here. I'm going to entertain a motion to issue a positive order of conditions for the plans as presented by P.J. Keating.
Second.
Do we have any further discussion? And that can come from anybody that's present at the meeting.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, and again, I'm not your lawyer, so.
No,
please,
and,
Mr. Blake,
and,
chime
and,
in.
and I will also, and let me state, I made this I asked for a motion and a second to keep this conversation going.
Right, well,
Yeah.
just sort of a point of procedure, the commission should really close the hearing before taking a vote on the actual application.
Okay. It's funny, that's something I don't think we've ever actually done that before.
Mr. Chairman, the motion could be, I move to close the public participation portion of this hearing.
I get you, okay, thank you, Mr. Blake. So, entertain a motion to close the public hearing portion of this.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So now I'll entertain a motion to issue a positive order of conditions for the plans as proposed by P.J. Keating.
So
Including the
moved.
restoration plan?
Including the restoration plan, yes.
Second.
Okay, so for the, yeah, both things. Joanne, do you, so we have for the plans, for the cleanup and the restoration plans? For both. Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Commission members, further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, Mayor, this is Mike Toohill, I apologize. The restoration plan as proposed may be modified, so I wouldn't necessarily state that this restoration plan as proposed is what is going to be implemented, because as Chuck and I mentioned, we have to monitor this for a period of time to see what is the appropriate mitigation, restoration.
So I'll entertain an amended motion to just issue a positive order of conditions for the plan to move the silt pile out of our jurisdictional area and the plans for the monitoring of the situation.
I'll make a motion.
So we have a motion.
Second.
Any other feedback? Thank you, please, Mr. Blake.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, and I do apologize for doing this to you, but it may be easier because there does appear to be some agreement between the experts on when the restoration needs to happen. What often will happen is that the Conservation Commission will close the public portion of the hearing. The and then continue the matter for further deliberation for a week or two. At which time, in between, the conservation agent and the experts and sometimes town council can draft up at least a draft of a decision that encompasses all of these nuances that aren't in this application. At that point, you put that before you, you deliberate, make changes as you like, and then you can vote that in. That way we get the nuances that the two, which I think the two experts are in agreement. For example, how do we make the determination of we aren't going to require wetland restoration until November, until we can figure out if it's necessary. All of those little nuances can be encompassed in a drafted decision that we put before you in a week or two, and then you can sign off on it. You can make your changes and sign off on it. I think that in a situation like this, that might be the best route to go.
If I may, just one thing we did have, I tried to draft up the potential restoration plan and the monitoring and how we would assess the monitoring, fairly detailed, to try to avoid, debate in the future over it. Some pretty specific quantitative metrics in that monitoring plan of how we would assess the various areas. So, I'm not, maybe Mike disagrees with me. I think the restoration plan, what is unknown is how much of it will be implemented, but the process for determining that is spelled out in the plan.
Mr. Toole, any thoughts, since Mr. Karen just mentioned your name?
The only area where there's an unknown really is Area 1, as to whether or not that was going to be left, which I think was the proposal in your restoration plan, or if we were actually going to go in there and remove materials. So that was the one area where we had a discussion as to when we would make that decision. But I think, as Mr. Blake said, we can certainly help Marilee draft conditions that cover that and that incorporate the wetland restoration plan, Chuck, the way that you had it written out, and then pass that on to you and to Doug to take a look at. We all want the same condition on the restoration.
So, Mr. Blake, back to you for clarification, and just to go back to the statement you were saying about another conversation based on what we're voting. I'm a little confused here, because I've now tried to make two different motions, and one has been yes, the cleanup plan, which is slightly different than the restoration plan, and now I'm hearing, well, let's wait on the rest. So I'm going to ask you to restate what you said, because we need to be able to make a clean motion here.
Sure. What I was saying, Mr. Chairman, and I understand your issue. What I was saying is that you've closed the public portion of your hearing. You've deliberated a little bit. You have before you plans, you have before you expert testimony. What you could do is you could move tonight to continue this hearing to a time and date certain, at which you would deliberate on a written decision, so that you would actually have a decision before you. You could do that in a week, or you could do that in 2 weeks. You have 21 days from the close of this hearing to do that. That's all I was saying. Then that way there would be a written document before you, rather than a bunch of plans and applications, some of which may or may not be consistent with what was discussed here tonight. And then you can take a draft decision and you can make changes to it. You can vote it that night, and then it can be issued the next day.
Mr. Blake, I just want to ask you one question. The hearing is closed, so we don't need a continuance. That's the first thing. And the second is, they automatically have 21 days to issue the order of conditions, and that gives 3 weeks. That gives plenty of time for us to help draft the order and then bring it to the next meeting, which might be 14 days, but we still have plenty of time to do that. So it'll be within the 21-day issuance period.
That is correct, although I understand what you're saying, Mr. Toohill, but I would continue it to a date certain for the deliberation.
Oh, I agree with that. It's just technically not a continuance of the hearing because the hearing is done.
Yeah, all right, we can dance on that
All right.
pin all you want. That's fine, but we end up in the exact same spot.
Right.
All right, thank you for this law lesson. Continuance of hearing. Mr. Toohill, I want to ask you to repeat that last thing you said. So we have continuance of a hearing is... Hmm? No.
Well, what I was saying is the hearing is closed, so you don't
Right.
need to continue the hearing.
Right.
You have 21 days to issue the order of conditions. Mr. Blake is correct. We ought to set a date certain as to when you're going to receive and vote on that order of conditions.
Okay.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, any deliberations with regards to what is going to be included in the order of conditions is essentially an executive session of yourselves.
Mhm.
I mean, once the order of conditions, you write it, it is what it is, then you can vote on it at that time. But, it's not for public deliberation.
Mr. Chairman, it absolutely is. In fact, you can't issue the decision unless you've deliberated on it. So you can put, your conservation agent can put a draft decision together. At your next meeting, you can discuss that and adopt that order, or you can change that order. But you can do it you have to do it in open session.
It's open session, but
If
not.
I may, Mr. Chairman,
Please, Mr.
is that
Vigneault.
routinely issue order of conditions in an open session?
Yeah.
You have town legal counsel assist you in those matters? Just wondering how the commission usually does it.
Usually,
Mr. Chairman, I don't have to answer that.
now anybody that's ever watched a broadcast of our meetings knows that we vote on orders of conditions at our meetings. That's,
Right.
it's not out of the ordinary for us.
Okay, thank you, sir.
But if we have the option of 21 days of putting the details to that order of conditions, then we can do that too.
The question is July 13th, does that fall outside that window?
It's
It's our next
21
meeting.
days.
21 days.
Yeah,
for
so
days.
we're cutting it close, so I don't know.
You can't do it next meeting?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just very briefly, because it does sound like if the next meeting's gonna be the 13th, you'd be outside for 21 days.
Mhm.
I think Mr. Karen's, what he said earlier, I believe is correct, and I certainly understand Mr. Toohill's point, that there are still some outstanding questions based on what we see here in the next 6 months or so with respect to what exactly is going to be implemented from the restoration plan. But I think Mr. Karen was correct that the restoration plan itself was really carefully drafted and constructed to really account for all those potential developments. So that I think if you look at the restoration plan itself, the original motion that was put to essentially approve that restoration plan, I do believe that the restoration plan actually does cover the eventuality that Mr. Toohill was concerned about, or the possibility that we could have to go in a couple different ways. I mean, Mr. Karen can maybe speak to that more if the commission needs that for comfort, but I do believe the restoration plan really does specify all that and lay it out and establish the parameters by which we would be able to determine where and to what extent restoration is needed or not. So in my view, the first motion you made, I thought it made sense and could be easily implemented.
So if, and somebody clear this up for me so I can get it right, or clarify. So, motion is made, seconded, we issue order of conditions. I just heard the date, July 13, that's our next meeting. That's less than 21 days from now, isn't it?
That's exactly.
It's about
Oh,
21
it's
days.
exactly 21
Yeah,
days.
that's the problem, man.
So we would need to meet prior to that to
Yep.
finalize. How many minutes later is it?
No.
All right, so we have a motion on the table to issue a positive order of conditions for the cleanup and the restoration plan. Joanne, do we know, can you remember who made that motion?
On the amended one was.
No,
the
we're gonna, let's go back to the original
Going
motion.
back to the first
So,
one.
was that from you, Everett? Or was that from one?
Everett, I seconded.
Everett made the motion
Everett, Ryan.
to issue a positive order of conditions for the cleanup and the restoration plan. Second from Ryan. All in favor? And those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? So that's unanimous. And then we have ourselves. So that vote is taken. Separately, we will deal with when we're going to meet again, because we have to do that before July 13th. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't need me any further, I'm going to go off to another meeting. But if you have questions, I'm happy to stay around.
I think we're okay, and thank you. I
you.
appreciate your input.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly.
Thanks, everybody on the
The knowledge
commission.
base is different than mine.
Thank you, Attorney Blake.
Okay. So, that's it for PJ Keating. We're gonna move on with our agenda.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. and
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the commission. Appreciate your time.
Thanks and good night.
All right.
Okay. We have no new business, no new filings. What's left are enforcements and those kinds of things. So let's start with Wilford Lane.
Mr. Addo came in today with the RDA, and he states that he's cleaning up, he's working on cleaning up the fill and construction debris. I swung by there after lunch, and it looks neat, but it doesn't look like the fill is coming out. It looks like it's dirt, in other words.
So he's cleaned up the mess around the edges. Is that what he's saying?
Yeah, there's small piles of brick that he's still, or stone, whatever it is, I think it's brick, that is, clearly being cleaned out.
Mhm.
But there's no sign that the fill itself, that the soil fill is coming out,
Okay.
So it wasn't clear to me when I was looking at it, if he understands that needs to come out.
Is that in the RDA that he gave you?
Yes, we brought the RDA. He writes, thank you. Work description is removing debris such as fallen trees, dead branches or leaves, removing stones and any foreign objects that were deposited in that area. The goal is to restore the affected area as discussed in our last two site meetings to its natural state.
Doesn't say anything about where he's gonna bring the debris?
No. No.
No, I think that was something that came up, that we discussed 2 weeks ago, that if that stuff's going to be taken off-site, where is it going?
That's construction debris.
Yeah,
Right,
and stuff
right.
like that. I mean, I just had my roof replaced and all that construction debris went to Rainham.
Yeah.
Unless he's got a place around here that takes it and is licensed to take it. I think that should be in the RDA.
Okay, so we need to put that into the RDA.
I know you had a dump truck in there.
Taking stuff out or bringing stuff in? Taking stuff out.
Oh, that's good.
Was it the same company that brought stuff in? Didn't say on the truck?
Mhm. You never know.
I just know there was a truck in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, the neighbor called and said that he was taking down another tree. But it's not, you know, that's not clear either. He may be chopping up what's already down
Because there were things down.
and, yeah, and trying to get it out of there that way. I don't know. He, you know, at this point, it's pretty contentious between the two of them,
Yeah.
so. But I think I need to make it clear to him that the actual loan needs to come out too, that the fill.
Right. Yeah. And I know I sent you those photos so you could see the tree line that we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And did he write anything in there about that patio? Because he said he was gonna file for that too.
Yeah, the area description says stone wall and stamped concrete in front of the property, so I'm assuming that's the patio.
Yeah. It'd be
And-
nice, you know, just for record-keeping purposes, the measurements of the patio should be on there.
Okay.
This is, it could mysteriously enlarge someday.
On a personal note, isn't his baby due in a couple of weeks?
Oh, I have no idea. I didn't ask him.
Possibly,
I know it's July.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
He made some reference to that when we were there.
Yeah, yeah,
Anybody else with
it's huge.
comments on this
Yeah.
draft RDA? You think there's things that should be in there? And where's this stuff going? Size of the patio. And the fact that once it's clear, it'll remain a no-activity zone.
Right, okay. Okay, so I'll call him in the morning and explain this stuff to him.
Mm-hmm. As I told him before, it's good to have a paper trail.
Right, right.
Mr. Hannon, I know when this issue came up 2 weeks ago, you had commented on something related to it. I don't know if you wanted to add any more information.
I appreciate that. I had dropped off a cease and desist that the Board of Health issued with Merrill. So we've issued an order for him not to do any work there until he has a plan approved by us of where he's going to dispose of the material. I did go there and meet with Mr. Addo, and he indicated he was going to bring it to Pico Stone. So I let them know that they couldn't accept it. And we're concerned with how much actual solid waste is mixed in with the soil where he filled in. There's still some PVC pipe sticking out of the bankings. It all needs to go. We just want to make sure that, like you said, it goes to a licensed site.
And you broke up a tiny bit. Just to clarify, you said Pico cannot receive, is that right?
They cannot.
Okay.
No. And the Board of Health is going to take it up with Pico. We think they do better than to deliver this material there. And we just want to make sure that he doesn't move it under your order thinking he can ignore our, the Board of Health order.
Okay.
We all want to know where it's going. We all want to approve it.
All right.
And that's all we need.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else then on 4 Wilford Lane?
No.
21 Evergreen Drive, I know last time we talked 2 weeks ago, you had just seen Mr. Koska.
Yeah, and he indicated that he wasn't going to be ready for this meeting. He, had work in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
So, hopefully we'll hear from him before the next meeting.
Yes.
Yes.
Mrs. Fernandez, so you've heard what you know, the update from the agent regarding the work that your engineer is doing. Any other questions or comments for us?
No, thank you. He's still working on it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, so that's that. The other issue before us is filing deadlines. We have two choices. And Joanne mentioned them all. Well, she mentioned the fact that we can
You guys all ready?
get to,
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, no, I'm not gonna
I'll
choose
share,
anymore.
I'll share.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So if we don't wanna move the meeting, then we have the filing happen 3 weeks before?
Almost.
2 weeks.
Well, the
It would
final
have to happen
deadline,
like 2 days after the meeting then. So if we're not gonna move our meeting for July 13th, then the filing deadline would have to be
Tomorrow.
June 24th,
tomorrow,
tomorrow.
tomorrow, right?
Because, yeah, you have to give the advocate the information.
Oh, it goes in on Wednesday and they publish it Thursday.
We get
Right.
all the deadline is 11 o'clock in the morning, so anybody can bring anything in till
Mhm.
11 o'clock. I get it all ready, type it up, it goes to the advocate for publication, but we have to have a review process. Then, after we review it and agree to it, then it gets published, the week after.
Right, she has to have it by Thursday.
She has to have it, right. Her
So that's-
deadline is
So they're a week
Thursday.
ahead,
Yeah,
anyway.
okay,
So then we have to add our process
all right,
before that.
okay.
So that's why it ends up, 2 and almost 3 weeks. Plus the next meeting has the 4th of July, does that work in there?
I asked her about that, she said that was fine.
Yeah.
Oh, good,
The
okay.
4th is a Sunday, so
You have to take the
good.
5th off
Okay.
on Monday.
Hmm.
All right, so that's option one. Option two is meetings get moved to either Wednesday or Thursday to account for the filing dates. To the posting dates within the advocate, because you said it's the same deal for Fairhaven Neighborhood News, which always runs
They run on.
Acushnet News, but I don't know if, Acushnet residents are probably more likely to look at the advocate than the Fairhaven Neighborhood News,
Yeah,
because it's not the Acushnet Neighborhood News.
yeah, I don't read that very often, so I don't know how often it has.
It tends to have selectmen news in it every time it runs,
Oh, it does?
yeah,
Yeah.
but,
That would entail setting up an account and talking to somebody over there, so
Beth
that might
David.
delay
Yeah,
those a little bit.
right. So, those are our choices, we either move the meetings to a Wednesday or Thursdays don't work for me, but I'm not the chair forever, I'm not a commission member forever, so that's a
What?
small consideration. No, I mean,
I know.
life is what it is, yes.
I'm okay with whatever.
Me too.
I can do Wednesday or Thursday, or
Wednesday.
Tuesdays.
Yeah, Wednesday.
So it's either gonna be a Wednesday meeting, or we change the filing date.
Right. Is that a pain for you, Joanne?
Oh, yeah.
I would prefer the Wednesday.
Yeah.
For me, Thursdays wouldn't be good for me
Yeah.
either. I
Right.
have a commitment on
Um,
one.
Is it a hardship on applicants to have to?
I think we could go back, if I'm correct, right, Merrily, we could go back to the schedule that we followed all the time
With Wednesday meetings?
with the Wednesday meetings. If we
Right.
moved it to Wednesday, the filing deadlines would be a lot closer to what we have been using since I've been
Right.
on board here.
Right,
That would comply.
Mm-hmm.
right, filing
Right,
deadlines.
So
would
it wouldn't
closer.
be this
It would be
far
fi- it would be
back.
5
It would-
days each time.
Right, we would meet the 5 days.
Okay.
It wouldn't be this far
Mm-hmm.
back for,
Right,
I think it might get a little confusing.
at first.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
change is change, but.
If you see the
filers.
advocate on this day, and then the next advocate comes out before the meeting happens, that is confusing. You're not likely to have people pick up the paper and say, oh, there's a meeting in this many days, and I'll make it. They'll say, oh, there's a meeting in way more days,
Mm-hmm.
It just gives you more time to forget, that's all.
And then you have more paperwork in the office,
Waiting,
hanging around and
yeah,
checks, and
okay.
most people file on the last day or that week,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we okay with
such
Wednesday?
is human nature.
Right.
You okay with Wednesday, Everett?
Every day's a holiday for me.
Yeah. Rub it in. That's all right for you?
Yes, fine for
Ryan?
me.
I have no problem with it.
Wednesday is fine for me, yeah.
Wednesday's actually better than Tuesdays.
Yep.
Okay.
See? Hey.
Alrighty, so I guess we'll start meeting on Wednesdays, starting in July.
Okay.
Now, question is, what do we do about that with this 21-day window now? And
So
the
that's our
problem.
other thing.
Yeah,
So, and, you know, we can all meet, we don't need, well, if it's to deliberate in order of conditions that's already been issued, they already said it doesn't have to be an open session, correct?
no,
It sounded like it
No, he
was
said it
town
needed to
council.
be
Yeah.
open
it
session.
needed to be open session, that's what Mr. Blake said, yeah.
Just, yeah, because of open meeting laws.
Mhm. Yep.
So we-
We don't need to, we do need to post that, right?
So we would need to post that tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right,
Post that
Right.
tomorrow.
for
so
the next
then-
meeting on Tuesday the 13th.
But,
And then after that.
but we wouldn't be meeting on Tuesday. the
Yeah, we
13th.
can't.
We have to make a special date.
Right.
Yep.
But you had, you don't need the 21 days anymore because you already made your decision, right?
21 days
No.
for the order of conditions.
Yeah, we need it, yeah, we have to do it within the 21 days.
Okay.
That's
so-
how I was hearing it.
Okay,
Yeah.
It's
so
like
so the
order-
next
yeah.
meeting should be on the 13th.
That would be the
I-
first day.
I might not make it.
I think,
That's the 21st.
I mean, we
Yeah.
could have a special meeting of the commission just for this topic
Let's do it.
and do it
Yeah.
on the 6th, no, the 6th or the 7th, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, it would have,
Yeah,
wait a minute, yeah, I should pull up the calendar on the phone.
Well, when they say 21 days, that's 21 business days or
Tuesday.
No, it's 21 days,
calendar days, including the Sunday?
including the Sunday. Yeah.
Yeah, so Joanne's right, that would be 21 days, right there. The 13th would be too late.
Why don't we, all get
Meet on the 6th.
used to
Yeah.
going on the Wednesdays and go with the 7th,
Or we could do the
Or the
7th.
7th, yeah, it's fine, yeah, either way.
Okay.
right?
Yep.
Just remind me.
That's why the little notation says, please
I'll put
note,
it in my phone.
dates are subject to change.
Is it possible that night we meet at 7?
So July 7th
I had
at
something up. in public
7 PM.
7 PM, yeah, that's fine.
Do we have a meeting spot?
Is there time to post it?
Yes,
Because if we do it tomorrow.
and I'm on vacation starting tomorrow, so Mary Lee is
Yep.
gonna be holding down the fort.
Yeah, because you're gonna use them or lose them, you said, right? So you're on vacation tomorrow,
Till the 30th.
oh, so the end of
Yeah.
this town
Fiscal
year,
year.
Yeah.
fiscal
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
we try and meet tomorrow? Can we?
Hmm?
Can
We can't meet tomorrow only because we haven't posted it.
Yeah, you have to have
It's gonna
48
be an
hours.
advertised
we?
meeting.
Conservation on the 7th.
So this is just a
7th.
meeting, not a hearing, it's just a public meeting.
And where could we meet?
Can we meet upstairs in that room in conservation or not?
Sure, yeah, we can, well, you don't need Zoom, right?
No, because,
Well, I'm not
Just a
old.
discussion amongst us.
Yeah,
Then, yeah, you could
I mean,
meet.
if
so we
you
would
want-
need a cushion of cable, right? I mean,
Yeah, you're gonna have to,
yeah,
there's a lot of stuff in there that needs to be,
yeah.
the table's full,
Yeah, but
you're gonna have all that.
that's what I'm doing now, is
Okay.
cleaning off my desk, so I just clean that.
You know.
too.
I mean, don't
do
forget that.
like what cats do, just knock
Yeah,
it
yeah,
all off
that's
the
it,
edge.
yeah.
Well, let me see, the 4th is what so we have the Monday off,
Hmm.
so that cuts me, I'll be back Thursday and Friday, have Monday off, Tuesday.
Oops, that's not the 6th, that's
It
the
won't be
7th.
much for me, is it gonna give them enough time to draft everything? I mean, this order of conditions is getting drafted by,
The 13th.
but you're gonna deliberate on it, so you're gonna wanna see it?
Yeah,
Right,
Yeah.
so is that
Right.
enough
it
time?
has to be presented to us, yeah.
Right,
Yeah, yeah.
you're gonna have enough time to get, well, you won't
It
be
seems like a
here,
lot
so
of,
it'll be
well,
on
the
me.
restoration plan is already drafted,
Right, right.
and cleanup plan is more or less drafted too.
But are you gonna have
So
a bunch
but the
of,
question is, who writes that OOC?
it sounded like the attorney was gonna have,
Well, he wants to see it,
Yeah.
for sure.
yeah, and then the two.
You talking Blake or Leger?
Blake,
Okay.
yeah.
So So is that gonna be enough time for all that to be done?
Right.
And Two Hill and the
No.
gentleman said they were.
They're all getting
Helping.
paid, so hopefully
Yeah.
they can, you know, they can do it in 2 weeks. But in terms, like, normally, when an order of conditions is written, is it you that writes it? The agent writes it?
Well, yeah, depending on what you guys decide at the meeting, you know.
Mhm.
Often you'll list any specials that you want
Right.
on there. You know, otherwise they're pretty boilerplate for a lot of
Mhm.
things.
So we meet on the 7th. And the order, the conditions that go in there are like the NOI we received. It would be that language, correct? And then anything we want to add to it.
Right, right.
Okay.
Their particular NOI doesn't have a lot of language in it, but
Oh.
it's fairly vague, but
Mhm.
yeah, we can add the particulars and.
All right.
Like the square footage is in the restoration plan, that kind of stuff. We can get it over there.
So then we get,
It's
So,
just a lot to
we
swallow.
draft it all
You
up,
leave it.
Yeah,
and
It's just
then
a
the
bad
boys
time.
wanna see it, and
Yeah.
then-
It's
I know.
just, it's tough.
okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
can I just ask you, are you good with this? Are you comfortable with this, Joanne? Do you want to alter it in any way? What can we do to help?
There's not much, I mean, I'm gonna do the best I can with the knowledge I have. I mean, until we have somebody aboard, I
Yeah,
mean,
and, you know, you and
you
I,
know,
we can
okay.
communicate.
yeah.
And
Lots of questions.
I would hope,
No, it's,
I would expect Mr. Blake would be available to help too.
Right,
And Two Hill was hired by the town,
right.
so if we need his input,
Yeah, you offered to help with that.
Mr. Two Hill, not just Two Hill, Mr. Two Hill. All right,
Thank you.
so,
Yes, that-
meetings will start July 7th on Wednesday, and then, but then we should go to our regularly scheduled July 13th meeting as well.
It'll be July 14th if you're
yeah, I
on
would
Wednesday.
say let's
Wednesday.
switch them all to, I'll redo
Wednesday, sorry,
this.
yeah, thanks for,
Yeah.
I'll redo this again.
let me know Wednesdays from here on
Meet on
in.
Wednesdays, move the filing dates back to what we will normally have.
Just keep
Not,
them, yeah.
not this schedule that's in front of you now.
Right.
Mhm.
Keep the ad on the Thursday prior.
Yeah.
We'll use the advocate.
Mm-hmm,
It's,
Right.
it's reasonable for everybody.
mm-hmm,
We'll keep that same schedule we've been using for the past year, you know,
Okay.
years until
How much
it was
is
changed by the
Between the,
administration.
you said,
That's what
they said it was
happened.
$250 for the standard?
At least, she told me, and that was with removing
Depends on how big
the-
the column size is, right?
She didn't get into
Yeah.
specifics, she did me a favor and looked it up that day. So that was with removing the seal that we include
mm-hmm.
and the Zoom link if we needed that at any time. That was
Right.
with those two things removed.
Hmm.
That was $250 at a minimum, she said. It could be even more.
Wow.
So I
They're
just,
charging you for length of
yeah,
column.
it's just a lot of money
As
to pass on
opposed
to a resident, you know, that's just.
Yeah, yeah.
Right,
No.
as opposed to $42
Right.
for the advocate.
42?
And that's
Yeah.
been the same fee
Yeah.
that I had when I was on the commission the first time, when me and
Hmm.
Monica were here, we secured that, so that's a tough thing to let go, you know, that's a really great rate, and the woman that I deal with is very kind and easy to speak with, and last minute changes and anything like that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The billing works well,
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
and there's a lot of pluses to it,
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
Something you
know,
built
the-
there.
The easiest, I mean, you guys did meet
7
years ago
o'clock
on
the
Wednesdays,
7th,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, which
So
leads me to
until until the administration changed it, nobody actually thought of that.
I know,
Mhm.
but will
Right.
they be able to put on here any of the conflicting meetings on Wednesday at 7, do you know?
I don't think so, there's multiple people who do the tapings, there's Nick and,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Eric and
Yeah.
a few more, I guess.
So I did ask for 7 PM for the meeting on the 7th, but otherwise, normally when we meet on Wednesdays, we are still okay with 6 o'clock?
Yes, yes, definitely.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
So the only time, just the 7th at 7 PM.
Mhm.
All right, so we've taken care of that bullet item. Agent updates. Merrily, any other things we should know about?
Oh, just
Resource issues in town
in town,
or statewide, in this case.
yeah, no,
Sounds like you're going on.
in town, you know, people are getting started with stuff, but there's not really anything that's outstanding, you know. I did print out these things of the priority habitat map, because I wanted you to see it. So one of them has the more southern part of town, and the other one has the more northern part of town, if you wanna look at it. And if you have comments, they'll take them at the website, at Natural Heritage.
Okay.
So, and what else do I have? The rest of the paperwork I have here is about PJ Keating, restoration plan and that sort of thing, those plans. So there's not a lot. Friday's supposed to be my last day here, so,
So you're using up vacation time next week?
yeah, a couple of days, yeah.
Everybody need that?
And, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I really appreciate working with you guys. You're a
same
great
here.
board,
Same
bunch.
here.
Back at you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I'm gonna miss you.
before we sign off, I'm actually gonna thank you for your service to this town. You started, is it 2009?
2006.
2006. Wow. So thank you for
Do you
your
want that?
No, I'm good. I'm
dedication to
familiar.
this town, to the natural resources, for channeling the Lorax. And many times when you ask people, how many, are you going to keep trees on your property? Because you're always speaking for the trees, which is a good thing. It's been fun, and congratulations too on your next mission.
Well, thank you.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
Appreciate
Good luck.
it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Stay in touch.
Thank
And
you.
we'll be
I'm
fine.
happy for you.
We'll see you at the
Yeah.
conferences.
I'll meet you guys.
That's right, yeah, we'll see you at future MACC conferences. All right, so folks, the next time you see a Acushnet Conservation Commission meeting, there will be a new agent. We don't know who that is. So, again, Merrily, thanks for 15 years
15
serving
years.
the town as our agent.
Thank you.
Led us through, yes, you led us through a variety of changes and updates, and I know you did a lot of writing on stormwater regulations.
Yeah, we've done a lot of stormwater.
Yeah.
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 It's been fun.
Huh?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
It's gonna miss you.
Yes, Christian is gonna miss you.
Yeah.
So, it's like our next meeting will be Wednesday, July 7, and then followed back on schedule Wednesday, July 14.
Perfect.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
No, somebody needs to make the motion.
I'll make a motion.
I'll
Do it.
second.
Thank you,
All in
sorry.
favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned at 7:29 p.m.